The next podcast you're about to see is from TheBizPhyz show. We have career coach Chelsea Stokes on from Rich and Hired. And she gave a pseudo masterclass on what it is to find a new career, enter into the workforce, or kind of decide if it's time to shift. It was crazy information. It was awesome. But what else was kind of interesting, we shifted to the real life portion of the podcast, and she became super vulnerable when it came to her battles with mental health, how she shifted out of that, and how she's where she is now today as a very successful businesswoman and career coach. So if you're a woman, definitely have to watch this. No doubts about it. I don't care where you are in life or your career. If you're a man, you want to watch this also to get some really invaluable insights into some of the struggles that women still have in the workplace, still have in the career world, and you can actually begin to better understand the female in your life and really support them. So enjoy the podcast. And remember, I'm at TheBizPhyz, at TheBizPhyz. Handles the same on Instagram and YouTube. The infrastructure is not 1,000% right now, but please share the podcast. TheBizPhyz show. Today's show, we have a special guest on who requires no really elaborate introduction. She's career coach Chelsea. She's from Rich and Hired. Chelsea Stokes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome. Well, I have to thank you first for flexing with us today. As everyone can see, we are actually in one of my gym locations, because the other location, they had rock breaking going on, and we decided it would be bad background noise.
Yeah. This is relatable. It's good. It's authentic.
This is authentic. We call this the Bat Cave. And, you know, it's interesting because I started this show, and you're technically the first guest under this banner. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm honored.
Don't be too honored.
Humbly honored.
My mentor, who kind of pushed me into doing this, said, make it sort of a career fair type feel every time you have a guest on. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, they should also get a flavor of what it is to do particular jobs. And I'm like, this is more about like business and growth. He said, no, you have to serve everybody. So the first thing I'm going to say is like, what is a career coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so a lot of people think a career coach is a recruiter. So it's a little bit different than that. Recruiters place people in jobs. Career coaches help people to get the skills to land better jobs. So that's basically what I do. And every career coach is a little bit different. They have different specialties. Me and my team, we specialize in helping women, and we specialize in strategy and mindset work. So we're really trying to equip our clients to be empowered to be able to land amazing job opportunities. So
that's good. So in my consultancies, I've coached people in careers, right? Help them to kind of strategically position themselves to get up the ladder.
Yeah.
But I'm a fish out of water with what you do. I don't even like understand what the starting point, the inflection point is, but you've provided me some clarity on that. Why do you do what you do?
That's a great question. I kind of fell into it 4.5 years ago. Okay. So I got let go from my job at that time. And I had wanted to start a business, but as you may know, I don't know what it was in the beginning for you, but I was like, oh, I'll just make a website and people will show up.
They'll just come.
They'll just come.
Absolutely.
I'll just make a website and people will find me on Google and they'll be like, Chelsea's great.
Magnetism.
I want to work with her.
Yep, loaded with business within day one. Go ahead.
Exactly. So I made a website a couple years prior and nobody came. So I was like, well, okay, I guess this is going to be a lot harder, and put it to the wayside. And then in 2020, I got let go from my job, and a bunch of my coworkers did as well. So I was like, let me help people with their resumes and things like that. And I realized I was fairly good at it. And I was like, I think I could make a business out of this, but I don't know how to build a business. So I got a business coach, and she helped me to build what I have today, the foundation. And in the beginning, I was just looking to kind of make away during COVID to
Right.
just be able to provide for myself a little bit.
Right.
I actually was thinking about going back to school, and I'm like, maybe I'll just make a little cash on the side. But COVID was the perfect time to start a career coaching business because number one, people had a little extra money from the government stipends, if you remember that.
I do.
So they had a little extra cash to spend. And people were really reevaluating their lives. Like, I think one of the beautiful things about COVID, while there were so many devastating things, was that it shined a light on the areas of our life that really needed some adjusting. And I think for a lot of people, they realized that their careers were not what they wanted. There was the great resignation during COVID where people were just leaving their jobs like
I'm out.
crazy.
Yep.
So I fell into it on accident, but I really, in the beginning, did have a passion for helping a former version of me. I struggled in my career, and I needed a
That's
career coach.
interesting.
And so I really set out to help someone like myself, 10 years ago.
Okay, you said a lot.
Yeah.
So the analyzer in me is going to try to go back and break it down piece by piece.
Sure.
First of all, COVID, it reset a lot of things in life for people. Reevaluation is the way to really put it, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of opportunity in COVID. And it's interesting that you saw that as an opportunity. I know for us in the gym end of it anyway, and I'll just share the story, is we were shut down.
Yeah.
And gyms were closing left and right. So I had to look past it. I used to take my kids into the empty facilities, and we used to clean and move things around, and go home. And my wife would be like, "What are you doing?" And I would say, "Well, I'm looking past it. I couldn't get trapped in it."
Yeah.
So it sounds like you took the opportunity to also help people not to get trapped.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
And that's super admirable. But let me back up a little. You had a statement in it. You had some motivation, ambition, and hunger, which are all really different things, because you said you started it because you had left your previous career.
I started because I gotten let go from the
Gotten let
job I
go.
was at.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now you're an ambitious person anyway, but now you have some motivation.
Yeah.
And then at what point, okay, I'm going to start this thing, because month one, why aren't there 1 million people hitting my site, right? What turned it into hunger? What flipped the switch?
So I think in the beginning, I had nothing to lose. I was unemployed. I moved back home with my mom once I got let go. I think my lease ended in May, and
Thanks,
COVID
Mom.
started in March. So yeah,
Right.
shout out to Mom.
There you go.
So I had and I even my desk at the time, I got off of Facebook Marketplace for $20.
Sweet.
Everything, I got a Chromebook for $100. It was scrappy. And I really had nothing to lose, and my expectations were really low. I didn't set out to say, I'm gonna build a 6-figure business,
Right.
or I'm gonna help hundreds of people. I said, I wanna help one person. If I can help one person, I will be happy.
That's a great starting
And
point.
yeah, I say that today too. I'm now I've been so blessed to help hundreds of people, but
Right.
it's still today, I'm this podcast, I was praying on the way here, I'm if this helps one person, it's successful,
And,
right?
and draws one person out.
Exactly. So that was my motivation. So my expectations were very low. And so because of that, it was easy to exceed them. It wasn't my intention in the beginning, but it just happened naturally. And I got that first client. I hired a business coach. She helped me. I got my first client. And seeing her transformation gave me
Right.
that hunger, because I realized I have a gift for this.
Yes.
I can do this. I can help people. Then I got my second client, my third client, my fourth client, and that just helped me get that hunger to want to help more and more and more people. It was about impact for me.
Right.
And I wasn't making a lot in the beginning. When I first invested in my business coach, I had a couple $1,000s in savings. I put 70% of that into this business coach.
Right.
So I had no money, living at home with my mom, trying to
Yeah.
just get by. So it really was just about trying to help people.
I'm gonna play off of that a little bit. Why did you set your expectations so low?
I think that's a good question. I really just didn't know what was going to happen. It was so unknown. I had no idea where it was going to go. And like I said, I wanted to I was just at a crossroads. I was
Right.
let me reevaluate my life.
Right.
Because the job I was in was a job I knew I was not going to be in forever. And so I'd already been kind of thinking about my next steps a little bit. So I'm like, let me just explore and see kind of, okay, maybe I want to go to school. Maybe I want to try to build this business. Maybe I want to do something else. So I was looking kind of in all these different avenues, and I just was very open to what could happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to turn this into a psychological podcast, but I think that sometimes setting the bar so low is one of our greatest enemies, and also can lead to procrastination.
Yeah.
So it's good you got a business coach. I mean, like that's a major thing. But before I get to the next thing, I just have a live read here. So this advertiser segment has actually been reserved for 3 great organizations that help to stop and eradicate child sex trafficking. Operation Underground Rescue, the Spear Fund, and of course the National Centers for Missing and Exploited Children have a mission to put into the stopping and eradicating exploitation of children and child sex trafficking. If you can go to one of their sites and make a donation, that would be greatly appreciated. The United States is the #1 consumer of child exploitation materials. Babies 2, 3, 4, 5 years old get sex trafficked up to 5 or 6 times a day. Not quite sure how any of us can go to sleep knowing that that occurs. The trade has now become more lucrative than that of the drug trade. Please visit one of these organizations' site and make a donation today. Thank you. So back to the less important stuff, really, right? I mean, you're important, but you said a lot there. So I still want to kind of delve into, because I'm fascinated why people do what they do.
Yeah.
Are you able to, and I love that you help women. I still kind of think women are kind of not in the greatest leverage points in the marketplace still. I think there's still some disparities, despite what people say there's not. I think there is.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that. But like, are you able to, at the deepest level, wake up and cast yourself into the shoes of that girl that like barely was able to get out of bed that morning because she's so dejected? Smart, brilliant. She's just in a crossroads. She's got that cup of coffee and she's staring at the computer screen and she thinks that's the way she's going to find the next big thing. You know, how do you translate that compassion to these clients, but at the same time, you're coaching them through life too. So are you still able, like, do you still have that? Because I know you told me in the past, like, you had some down spots in your life too, and we're going to get to that.
Yeah.
So you still feel that, or are you just kind of like in business mode now?
No, I think what I always tell my team is I don't want to grow so big that we lose what you're describing. I don't ever want my clients to feel like a number. I don't ever want them to feel like we don't care, because at the core of what we do, we want to help people. And I've been really blessed that we're at a point where we are growing rapidly and we are helping more people, but that still needs to be the focal point, is that people feel cared for. So I've really tried to keep myself humble and bring myself back to where I was and where I came from and what I experienced, because that's what a lot of my clients are going through. So I do try to keep that the focus.
Yeah, and that's good. And, you know, like we went to the same Bible study. So I always make this correlation in staying humble. Like, you never want a church to become a corporation with a cross.
Yeah.
You want them to stay connected with the people. And as you become, as your footprint gets bigger on social media, as you become more prominent, as you know, people ask you maybe to speak at a local engagement or something, it's tough because you kind of start to get removed from it. And that's important. So I'm glad to see that you can still stay in touch. But sort of moving along. So I looked at some of your social media. I like it. I think you give a lot of really valuable information away for free. But I can tell it's not just a strategy. A lot of people that give a lot of free information away on social media, it's just part of their funnel.
Sure.
And that's okay, because everybody's trying to make a living. So one of the things I saw was the elevator pitch. Okay. Now, in relationships, you're not supposed to give your elevator pitch, because you're supposed to, you know, especially with men, you're supposed to be a little stoic. You don't give away the farm. You're supposed to be a little mysterious. But in trying to capture a career, you got to let them know, right? So how does that elevator pitch normally look for everybody, and what's the importance of it?
Yeah, so I think for women, they do struggle with that, with putting themselves out there and owning their abilities and advocating for themselves. So that is a skill in itself, to have the mindset of being humble but being confident, right? And I think a lot of the women that we work with, they tend to be more on that more passive, softer side. Not that that's a bad thing, but there is that line of still being feminine but putting yourself out there. So for me, I think right now, people's attention spans are so short, right? We got social media, people are looking at videos for 8 seconds before they move on. So our attention spans are shorter than ever. So an elevator pitch for me, in let's say an interview context or a networking conversation, the first 5 minutes of that conversation is where you're really going to capture someone's attention, right? And where they're really going to form their impression of you. So we really train our clients in, how do you quote unquote sell yourself to this person in a way that captures their intention, and that the conversation is a two-way street, right? You have something to offer them and they have something to offer you. So a lot of people feel weird about networking or talking to someone about jobs because it's like, oh, I'm just asking for a job from them. But you have value to provide for them. If you have a job available and this person's and you're a fit for that job, and you can tell them why you're a fit, then that is a two-way street that you're developing with that person. So I think that for us, the way we approach it with our clients is the elevator pitch is really where you are building that value for another person.
Right. Yeah, and that's good. And I think that when it comes to value, people are now beginning to appreciate authenticity, even employers, right? Because you can train somebody to do a lot of different functions, but you can't train somebody to be loyal and honest.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
when you can bring value from a marketplace standpoint, but you're also a really good person, I feel like the elevator pitch is more important as to speaking about the person
Yeah,
than
absolutely.
anything else. And you said you work with females and they're more passive. You know who Jordan Peterson is? All right. So Jordan says that women are just generally more agreeable. And because you're more agreeable, that can sometimes set you at a disadvantage in the marketplace.
Sure.
So it's interesting you said that. How do you work an inherently passive woman to the point where they learn they have to sell themselves?
Well, I think that if someone's struggling with that, like it could show up as people pleasing, let's say, right? First, the client has to see how that is negatively impacting their life, right? So they have to see the consequences of how that behavior has created their reality. So that's the first thing, right? Is to create that awareness. Once someone has that awareness, then we have to understand the deeper why. Okay, if you want to change this behavior, why? What is the impact? What does it look like? Basically, it's kind of shifting your identity. And I think this is like a really interesting topic that could probably be a whole podcast on its own, is like identity. Society tells us our identity is like set, right? Like you are an extrovert or an introvert. You know, you can't change. But I really see, I mean, in my own life, I have changed dramatically over the last year, 5 year, 10 years. And psychology even backs up that we can change and become new types of people. So I think that there has to be that understanding too of like, do you want to change and what do you need to change into, right?
Well, yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that. Okay, so intrinsically, inherently, somebody can be, like, let's say, more passive, right? Or more introverted. But I believe as you go through life, you can either fake certain characteristics or you can elect that I'm going to start taking on these characters, positive or negative, right? So I believe in having worked with, listen, people come to the fitness end of our business and they've gone through stuff. You know, they've gone through divorces, they're in marriage issues, they've lost jobs because they're just not capable to do it. And they come here in the worst possible position they could. And we see and teach them, take on these positive characteristics. And little by little, they do it, right?
Yeah.
So when you do that, and this is what I like about you, and I'm glad you segued into it, so I didn't assign it to you. I see that what you do, and I think has a lot to do with the fact that you're a Christian, is you're doing more than career coaching.
Yeah.
So when you get into crossing that line, are people normally receptive about it?
What line do you mean? Like changing behaviors? Changing
Yeah,
mindsets?
like do you just make it like part and parcel to the package where they understand that these are things that have to be done to get to where you want to go? Or does somebody say, hey, listen, I hired you to be my career coach. I don't want you to be my psychologist?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get both sides,
Okay.
right? Like we get people who are like totally like, teach me and I will do whatever. And then we get people, you know, we have like a mindset module and they're like, I don't need this. And then like, you know, we get 2 months down the line and they're having mindset blocks, right? So we try to meet people where they're at, right? I can't force anybody to take my coaching, to take my team's coaching to change, right? They have to want to change and they have to be open and receptive to change. So I'm sure you encounter this too, like you have to kind of meet someone where they are willing to change. So that's our approach typically.
Yeah, we try to meet them a little ahead of it and pull them up.
Right, like one step ahead.
Yeah, because like pushing never works. A pull, whether it's negative or positive, again, just above, pulling somebody up sort of seems to be the trick.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you infuse all that because it's quite necessary. And also, I know people who have very impressive CVs who cannot carry on a conversation,
Oh yeah.
who couldn't develop business if their life depended on it. Not a people person. So, you know, the fact that you're intertwining all those components as a necessity for the whole person is good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, and I don't know if you explain this to them, do you explain to them the potential politics that's in the hiring systems?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we work with women of, you know, minority backgrounds, you know, that have names that are clearly un-American. Like that client's going to have more challenges than, you know, Jane Doe, you know? So we have to definitely take all that into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, politics in the sense of also, you know, these companies who have a career opportunity and people from within want the opportunity, but there's a really qualified candidate on the outside.
Yeah.
And they have to post this job legally, and they post it in some paper in like Schenectady that's, you know, 100 miles away from the position.
Yeah.
I'm talking like politics like that. There's politics, there's nepotism.
Yeah, for
Obviously,
sure.
there's biases, right? How do you help people to get past something that's an obvious bias against them? And like, do they get trapped in that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is rejection is going to happen for the reasons that you described. Someone's going to get chosen over you because there's an executive that has a nephew that needs to get hired, or there's an internal hire. Like all those politics exist. So my approach to overcoming that is, okay, we can't change the system, right? Society. But I can try to open up as many doors for my clients that they have enough opportunities to choose from despite those challenges, if that makes sense. So that's what we do for our clients is we kind of say, hey, you're going to get rejected for jobs that you are perfect for because of the things you just said. But let's focus on where we can open doors, not where the doors are closing.
That's good. That's good. I'm really an advocate for family. Families within businesses. I think legacy businesses are good if people can learn to get along. But I believe also, you know, the whole old adage of like you have to start in the mailroom.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with anybody because of nepotism climbing the ladder if they deserve it and they earn it, right? With my own sons, I started them in the gyms, and I was, you know, they did garbage and toilets.
Yeah.
And guess what? Sometimes when the garbage and toilet needs to be cleaned, this guy's not going to look at it, so I'm going to do it too. So as long as you have that work ethic, I don't have a problem with it. But I also picked up, you said advocacy. So how do you teach self-advocacy? Because self-advocacy seems to be an entirely separate personality trait that somebody has to be able to switch and morph between. Like, you know, the woman can be a really sweet, docile, brilliant professional woman, but how do you have her understand, hey, listen, you got to be able to switch that gear and you got to go into self-advocacy. And when you respond, I'll tell you a story why. Because at some point, they're going to have to ask for something.
Yeah. You're going to have to ask for what
How do you teach that you can still be this person, but you got to be that self-advocate also.
I think there has to be like a deeper why, like kind of what I said earlier, you know, why are you doing this? And not just for yourself, outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So for example, you know, if a woman has kids and she wants to contribute to her household, or she wants to be home with her kids more, right? Maybe she's in a really stressful job and she's not having as much time with her kids as she wants. You need to be able to have that deeper burn and fire and that why
Right.
to go out and do something that's going to be uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Because self-advocacy typically is outside people's comfort zone, so naturally they resist it, right?
Yeah.
That's how our brains are set up. So you have to have something that's going to supersede the pain of getting uncomfortable. So that's the
like
way
that.
we approach it, is like, hey, it's not just about you, right?
Right.
It's about who else is this going to impact.
Yeah, and that's strong. I know you deal mostly with women, and I think, you know, we're Christian and we like the nuclear family unit. But I think there's probably nothing more beautiful than watching a woman, a single mom, who just starts hitting the benchmarks
Yeah.
and starts doing better for herself, and just climbing the ladder. And I think that's so important. And I'm sure you teach balance also. I roll my eyes because you're never in complete balance. There'll be
Sure.
times in your life where it's like crazier here and, you know, more balance there. But the story I'm going to tell you, and I want you to comment on it, is I had two concurrent consultancies going. Went in, we did a personnel audit, and we saw, it was actually two women in two separate companies. They had been in this job position for about 6 years. And I looked and I said, these guys were underpaying everybody, so it just wasn't the women.
Yeah.
But I said, particularly, I said, you know, to both of them, this girl does a lot. And I'm looking at sort of the returns on what she does.
Right.
And it's like 10x her salary. One was 20x her salary.
Right.
And one of them was in financial services, so that 20x also, and 10x, well, the 20x bore interest for this guy too. I said, you've been underpaying him by about $50,000 to $60,000 per annum
Yeah.
for the past 5 or 6 years. So I said something to them that could have gotten me off the consultancies, but kind of pushed them too. I said, you have to make this right. And he just, well, how do you make it right? I said, well, you're going to call her in, and you're going to say, listen, I've been grossly underpaying you, and I'd like to make it right. And I said, the first option is you make it right immediately, and you make the salary on modification. I said, that's how you make it right. I said, if you want to make it really right, you pay her for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
One CEO told me, well, I have people under me that should have picked this up, so I'm not doing it. And I knew right there that I was mismatched on the consultancy. I sent my bill out and I left. The other guy, this is a great story, single mom, financial services, calls her in, says, I'm going to make your salary, I get emotional talking about it. He says, I'm going to make your salary modification immediately. I'm going to pay you retroactively, I'm going to give you interest. And oh, by the way, how much do you owe on your house?
Oh, yeah.
Holy crap. There are people left out there like this.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something. How many of those people are left?
I mean, it's a smaller number, right? Because, yeah, that's not the way that the world would teach you to handle those situations, right? I went to a Christian business conference in February, and we were talking about this, that when you are the leader of an organization, most organizations, right, you're the leader, and all the stuff filters down to people, right? Like for lack of a better word, crap, right?
Rolls downhill.
Filters down, right? And the people at the bottom get most of it, where it should be opposite, right? Like as a CEO, you should be filtering out that, right?
You work for your people.
Right.
They
and
don't
you're
work for you.
the lowest person in the company should be getting the least of that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not, I think that for a lot of CEOs, it's like, okay, you succeed, like I win, like other people lose, right? And then kind of a medium is like, okay, we both win, but really, and from a Christian perspective, it's I have to sacrifice, right, as a leader, and you win, right? I have to like die to self, and you have to win. And what you're describing is like that, right?
Servanthood.
Yeah, exactly. Taking taking the sacrifice for other people and letting them win. That to me is true servant leadership.
Oh, amen. And what I didn't say was both CEO, I say the evil CEO and the good CEO, both CEOs said, and this is for all the viewers and all your people, all they ever had to do was ask.
Right.
Now, the bad CEO would have told the woman no,
Right.
but the good CEO would have been made aware.
Sure.
So, when do you know you're mismatched or misaligned in your career?
I mean, I think there are a lot of different warning signs, but I think when your job is not going to be perfect, right? No job out there is perfect, just like there's no perfect partner, right? There's going to be good times and bad times. However, if the bad is far outweighing the good and you're starting to have your mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health impacted, that is a clear sign that it's not right.
Right.
So I think it's having that, because I think, not to speak ill of the new generation, because I'm the millennial generation, we struggle with this too. It's like work has become this thing where it's like, I don't want to work. I just want to, it's become really mismatched, right? So we still got to work. We still have to give back to companies.
Want to work 1 hour a day? And,
yeah.
Right?
So, and I think that is I think that our purpose as humans is to work. We were made to work.
God intended us to work.
Exactly. So I don't think that this vision we think, oh, we're not going to work, we're going to be happy. I don't think that's real. But anyway, I think that there has to be at least more good than bad, right?
Yeah, and I'm so sick and tired of hearing work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Because you better believe that everybody who's successful worked way harder before they worked smarter.
Yeah.
And they sort of like dovetailed that in, right? Joe Rogan, with his podcast, he's like #1, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a stranger to a 16 or an 18-hour day. Patrick Bet-David, who's another guy on the come up with the PVD podcast, Christian guy, he goes. He's a grinder. So, these successful people are certainly not looking for ways to not work. They're looking for ways to work more efficiently. So that's really what it's about. How do you work more efficiently? But you brought up a couple interesting points. You said nothing's going to be perfect. No relationship, no business, no job. So is there always somewhere in there? Because I feel like there's drastic, there's passive, and then there's always a compromise. Especially when it comes to families, like you got to coexist. But in business too, when do you feel like it's okay? If somebody makes a compromise historically, does that mean there's going to be true appreciation for that person? So if they go and they say, hey, I feel I'm worth more money and I need more time off, and the boss reluctantly does it, has that been a win-win compromise, or do you think it was just done like to placate the person, and should they consider moving on after that happens?
Well, I think there's a lot of circumstances to consider, right? Like, money isn't everything. Is it a healthy work-life balance? Do you have good benefits? Like, what does kind of the full package look like?
Right.
And so, but I think if you're in an environment, if you're in a company where it's like, oh, I'm going to give you this, and it's like too transactional, where it's like, oh, now I gave you this, now you got to work harder, or you got to like do significantly more. Conditional, yeah. Then it's not a good sign. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know what you're doing. I'm getting more enlightened now, and I can also say with confidence, just knowing you from Bible study, and knowing the person you are, and we also volunteer at the Hoving Home, Walter Hoving Home, which is a great spot, rehabilitation of women. I know why I would use you, but here's your elevator pitch. Tell people why they should use you, and I'm not trying to make this an advertorial, but I know, like, there are a lot of really talented career coaches out there. But they're very focused on delivering what you're paying them for. You're very focused on changing the person also. And I believe that comes from your values. So sort of tell people, why you? Why you?
Well, it's always a tough question to answer because it's like, I'm not the person that's going to go out and be like, I'm the best career coach that is out there. I think I'm the best career coach for the people that feel aligned to work with me. So that's always the first thing I say is alignment and resonance, I think is really important when you are working with a coach. But I kind of want to play off something you said about like the work harder, not smarter type of thing. I think with women, and this is in my experience, we've fallen into this trap of hustling and grinding and boss babing. And I'll just say for me personally, it led me to a really, really bad, dark place where I was really unhappy. And I see it with my clients.
Talk about it.
So I'll answer your question, but I can come back to this. Essentially,
I'll bring you back to it. Go ahead.
if for people who want to work with me, I take a very intentional, strategic, and feminine aligned approach to job searching that aligns very well with women, that helps them not only to build careers, not just jobs, but to build lives that really align with their natural feminine energies. And I don't say this to say the negative things like too passive or, you know, those things, really just aligning with who God made you to be. And this isn't even a Christian thing because a lot of my clients aren't Christians. It's just really about aligning with the natural rhythms of your body and energy and creating a career that fits that. And so naturally when we do this with women, they're getting $10, $30, $50, $100,000 salary increases at amazing companies where they have work-life balance. It's like everything starts to fall into place. So that's my elevator pitch is,
So before you get to, I want you to go back to the deep, dark place it took you to, but I've got to play off that.
Yeah.
The natural rhythm. God's design for us. When a woman is aligned the way you just said, God will immediately honor that.
Yeah.
Okay. When they're going boss lady and all that stuff, it gets rough on a spiritual level first, and then all of a sudden starts showing up as consequence.
Yeah.
But for the ladies out there, one of my friends is married to a super high-powered mergers and acquisitions attorney. She's a little thing. She's a badass at work. She's a badass. He's got a very good construction company. And, you know, men aren't really supposed to go home and talk about how bad their day's been. They just go home and take it. She's a badass at work all day, but when she comes, they were having problems in their marriage. And I finally said to him, almost said his name, I finally said to him, you got to understand, she's in her masculine all day long. She's cracking heads with battering rams that have been in the industry forever. She's in her masculine all day long. When she comes home, all she wants to do is find a comfy pair of pajama pants or whatever, and just like she wants you to hold her. She wants you to watch a movie with her. She wants to sink into her feminine. And that is such a foreign concept to most of us that we have to learn the hard way. But you said it like you find a more femininely aligned direction, which is good because if they don't have to, you know, going into that masculine and burning that forever is bad for hormonal balances. There are a lot, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff that can come when you have to operate outside your natural box, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you saying that. Tell us the deep, dark place, femininity, and boss lady took you down.
Take a dark turn. So I feel like when I was growing up, like what I got fed was like anything boys can do, you can do better type of thing, right? And I took that to heart. I worked really hard. I was ambitious, and I was like, I'm gonna be just as good, if not better than boys.
Can you bench press that better than me?
No,
so
I
then,
can't.
so then it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and so, I mean, it wasn't like, I did sports and stuff, but it was just kind of like all around, right? Like, and that's what I got fed. And so as an adult, the way that manifested was like, you know, really high achieving, really ambitious, really hardworking, which these can all be great traits, but kind of like what you said, when taken to the extreme, that's where you fall into some bad places. So I've struggled with anxiety and depression my whole life. And for a high achiever, anxiety is very common because you're constantly going, and then you stop and like you don't know how to relax, right? I was just constantly in fight or flight survival mode all the time. And so then as things started happening in my career, like I was really unhappy in my career before I started my business and started to go real low. Made a career pivot to something else that kind of gave me a break, and then started my business. But, you know, I went with me in all those transitions, right? And so even though I was changing my job or my circumstances or where I lived, the underlying problems were still there. And so when I started my business, I started to get really into manifestation. And manifestation is all about you create your reality, right? So I was like, I want to make good money. I want to, yeah, I want to impact people. I want to get a house, like all these material things. Yeah. And to be honest, it happened. I manifested stuff. And I think some of those things were from God, but some of those things were not. Or the methods that I got them, I had to suffer as a consequence, which that's not from God. And so my depression and anxiety got so bad that I was really like at a point where I was passively suicidal. I wasn't wanting to actively do something, but I was starting to go down that road of I don't see the point in living. Like I was hopeless. And God pulled me out of that, honestly. But ultimately, I think that a lot of the hustling and grinding I did led me to burnout that deepened my depression and anxiety. And I'm glad God pulled me out of that, but it was a rough spot to be in.
Amen. We're going to get back to that because as we head into the real life section of the show, I just wanted to give a shout out to the brothers that just do gutters. My friends Kenny and Ryan. They take care of your aerial drainage system. That's right, they're not just gutters. They do gutters, seamless gutters, various sizes. They do gutter covers. They do water collection systems. They are a nationwide brand. And if you want to check them out and get some great prices with great warranties, just go to brothersgutters.com. Okay, here's my favorite.
I just got a quote from them, actually.
Did you really? Yeah. They're awesome.
Yeah,
they're awesome.
Yeah.
We're going into our real life segment. So. Sure. Career coach hats off. Boom. Whatever my hat is off. And I'm going to kind of start where you left off. I'm going to ask you some questions, but you said you were passively suicidal, right? And then you said my depression. I believe you should never assign the word my to anxiety, depression, hopelessness.
Sure.
Because we've all been in these spaces. And I did a little pre-call with you before we came on. I knew you weren't going to have a problem talking about certain things. So some people I don't have on any of my previous podcasts because I say I'm going to ask you some difficult questions. Are you willing to be vulnerable, transparent? You're willing to be authentic? And some people just don't want to share things. But to me, I think it's really important for everybody to know. I think it's important for women and men to know. Guy Massey does not leap out of bed every morning. You know, like, some days it's like, oh God, another day. And some days it's like, oh God, another day.
Sure.
So everybody has been there at some point. If they don't admit to it, they're either lying or they're on some sort of illicit narcotic substance.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the perceived lowest point in your life that you're willing to share?
I think that was like, I can't remember like a specific day, but it was just like kind of a blur of a time period, the end of 2022, where I remember I laid in bed and I prayed for God to take me off the earth. Cause I didn't think, I think I would have gotten there eventually, but I was like, I'm not going to do anything. Like I'm not, and I don't mean to talk about this so casually, cause I was really like, I just didn't want to live.
No, but it needs to be talked about because there's a woman, there's a guy sitting in a room right now, probably saying the same prayer. And that's not a prayer you want to say.
No.
How did you get out of that?
So it's kind of funny how God works. So I'm in this place, right? I'm hopeless, right? Like I don't want to live. I'm just going through the motions. I would cross the street, not look for cars, because I'm like, if a car hits me, I don't care. I didn't want to be here.
And maims you as opposed to kills you. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. It's so silly thinking back on it. Like, but I just.
It's real. You
want to get when you're in that pain, it is like it's not a physical pain. It's just like it feels like there's no way out, right? It feels like there's literally no way out other than to just be not here. So weirdly enough, the Lord led me to adopt a dog, which sounds so weird, and I don't recommend necessarily for people struggling with depression or anxiety. But he had me adopt this dog. This dog had medical issues. She had diabetes as a puppy, really difficult to manage. So all of 2023, I was focused on healing her, and it took the focus off of me onto her. That got me through that year. At the end of that year, I felt a calling through, weirdly, again, a social media influencer who had become a born-again Christian to read the Bible. She'd gone through this very clear transition, was literally glowing. And I honestly, at first, I judged her. I said, she lives in LA, she probably joined a cult.
Literally glowing, you just said.
She was literally glowing, yeah. But I thought...
Holy Spirit.
Oh, for sure. But at the time, when you're not a Christian, you don't know that. I was like, oh, she joined a Scientology cult or something.
Was she a previous, like, super toxic feminist type?
No, she was like she's just like a normal girl, like kind of living a worldly life.
Because there's toxic masculinity, but there's also toxic femininity.
There is, yeah. Okay. She was not in that category, but
Sweet.
We can talk about that.
So she's glowing.
She's glowing. She says, if you want to go on this journey, read the Bible. And I was like, I'm not going to read the Bible. I was raised Catholic. I was like agnostic atheist. Right. And I had some really big problems with the church. And we would read the Bible in Catholic mass, and I was not into it. So I'm like, I'm not going to read the Bible.
They had a Bible at the Catholic Church, or they have the little homilies and?
No, they had the Bible.
Oh, they did?
Yeah,
Okay.
we would read they would read from the Bible, but it wasn't the same way that I grew up.
Yeah, I was brought up Catholic.
Yeah. But anyway, I couldn't get rid of that feeling to buy a Bible for 2 weeks. And finally, I'm like, okay, I'll buy a Bible. I'll just buy the cutest one I can find, and it'll be a little coffee table book. And then I got it. I'm like, well, it's here. I should read it. Started reading the New Testament, and within 3 months, my depression went away.
The Word is alive.
Yeah.
The Word is alive.
And I took it pretty seriously at that point. I was like, maybe there's something to this. So.
I remember, I won't exactly say the timing, but I remember being in that type of pain. Mm-hmm. And I Googled, how do I tear my emotions out? And the first hit came back and it said, read the Bible.
Wow.
And I said, well, I should know this. And probably the only thing that was soothing to me was like reading Psalm 91 and reading the Bible.
Yeah.
Because, part of my issue has always been, I'm trying to future cast. Yeah. And I think a lot of people do that. They're worrying about things that may not even happen.
That's anxiety too.
Yeah, it is. It is a degree of anxiety. And when you're a high achiever, top performer, part of what runs you is your fuel is Red Bull and anxiety.
Yeah.
But what happens is at some point you crash and burn, and you would rather go be a Walmart greeter. Not that there's anything wrong with Walmart greeters. I'm just saying, a real entry level type. You'd rather go be a Walmart greeter and punch a clock because that anxiety gets so insane.
Overwhelming, yeah.
Overwhelming. So, look, we pull no punches. We're Christians. We believe God's word is the truth. And, in Bible study, you really like the richness of the word. And you really delve into that, which was really cool. Even with Jesus as your Lord and Savior, do you have what is your greatest fear right now?
I think my greatest fear, so we had talked before and you had said, can I ask you a question like this? And I was thinking what is my greatest fear? And first I thought failure, just failing, right? And then I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? Right. And so I was thinking about that. Yeah. And honestly, I think my greatest fear is not becoming the woman of God that he has intended me to be. That I would die and meet Jesus, and he said, I had this whole big plan for you, and not in a shameful way, right? Jesus would never shame me, but to know that there was this big, beautiful, prosperous plan that I didn't get the chance to do. Because I think every single one of us here, every person listening, God has a plan for your life, and it's a plan to prosper you, right? It might not be what you want, but it's what God knows is best for you. And every single one of us has that, which is the most crazy, beautiful thing. So my fear is that I would not achieve that. Yeah,
wow, a lot there too. Failure. I think that some of the most successful business guys I know and gals I know have failed in business. and now they're more successful.
Totally.
When you close your Bible and you walk into the world, I mean, I use myself as an example. I have some very accomplished business partners in my consulting group. A couple of them have many, many more nice cars than me. And I've been guilty of saying, I really need to get that.
Sure.
And I started to gauge at one point my life based on money and possessions. And then it kind of sunk into me. I just looked at my sons and said, they're good men.
Yeah.
And that's probably success,
Yeah.
right? But you said when you meet Jesus, if he says that to you, and I don't know, you know who Eddie Milet is? Yeah, Christian speaker, guy, really nice guy, a great channel. He's got to have, 10 million plus followers.
Yeah.
That was my greatest fear also. Not to be the woman God wanted me to be, the man God wanted me to be.
Yeah.
But the way he put it was, he really, it really scared me. I thought just like you did, but he said that God may say, meet this man. And I say, who is that man? And he says, this is who you were supposed to be. And that would be super frightening because I'm in a shift in my life where, I know I'm still going to be going hard for at least another 15 years. And then after that, maybe switch gears into more mentorship type, because I'll by then have made so many mistakes.
Right.
But, to think of you shaking the hand of somebody you don't even know, who you could have become.
Right.
Can you wrap your mind around that? What does that mean? Like you said, God had all these plans for you. Then you would want to know, well, what were the plans?
Yeah.
Is he going to show you? Is he not going to show you? If he shows you, you know it's real. But if he shows you, he breaks your heart. So try to get as much accomplished on this earth in line with God's word. See, a lot of time, Chelsea, I'll be honest with you, man, I veer. I don't know if you've ever veered.
Oh, yeah.
I veer.
Oh, yeah.
And
I'm not perfect.
yeah, we're not perfect. You had asked me a while back, how do you...
Wait, can I say something on this before you move on?
You're the guest, go.
I just want to, I think it's about obedience, right? That's what it really boils down to.
Right.
Is being obedient to God's plan. We are going to not be obedient, right? We're going to rebel. It's in our flesh. We want to go against it. But I think it's just about trying to be obedient to what God has for us and trying to learn his voice and see what he's saying. And so that's the best that I can do, right? I just try to do the best that I can do every day and to try to listen, to hear what he has to say and be obedient to that. The Hoving Home you mentioned, he told me to go to the Hoving Home he said, go talk. I didn't even know that the Hoving Home had a career lab. And he said, go talk to the pastor. And I said, no. Finally I went, found out they had a career lab, go and do the training. And then I didn't come back for 5 months. I did the training and then I just ghosted them. And I was felt so embarrassed to come back because I'm this is so embarrassing that I just ghosted these people. And I'd see them in church and they'd be like, hey, coming back, so nice. I'm oh yeah, I don't know. So anyway, that was part of God's plan. I wasn't obedient. Now I've gone and it has been the biggest blessing.
It's blessing you.
Blessing me. Oh my gosh. I would tell them that all the time. They're thank you for coming. I'm thank
what?
you for being here.
Every time I get to go there and do something, I'm don't thank me.
Shout out to the Hoving Home. It is a beautiful
you know
ministry.
What? No advertising space has been reserved for them, but right now I'm going to tell you, the Walter Hoving Home rehabilitates women who have all sorts of different issues, right? Drugs, alcohol, maybe abuse. Some mental health issues, abuse. They take them in. They have locations throughout the country.
Yep.
You want to put your dollars to good use. I mean, we can both tell you, we have physically seen the changes in people.
Yes.
We have seen the amount of money that they take and they put into the program. There's nobody skimming or getting rich off that program.
No.
And these girls, they work.
Oh, yeah.
They work. So, if any employers out there find that a woman has gone through that program, you're getting a worker. You're getting an honest worker, which is awesome. So I'm glad we went off track on that.
Yeah.
But I also think that who's given much, there's much required, right? when you have a family, I think men, we're very guilty of this. You think that success in your family is making sure everybody's driving a new car, your house is taken care of, or you buy a house, you take the vacations. That's an ultimate responsibility, and I think with social media now making it so much about money, 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 a lot of men are missing the mark at home.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a gift that God gives us. A family is a gift. So everybody out there that has children needs to know that you have to realize school has your kid for the majority of the day. You have your kid less than everybody else does in reality.
Yeah.
Unless you're a stay-at-home mom, which is like the most difficult job on the planet. We have obligations to our own family to raise really good kids.
Yeah.
But also, we have obligations to look outside of ourselves. And you volunteering at the Hoving Home, I mean, that's like, it's intensive emotionally.
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Like the one part is like, you can do it standing on your head. So it's really intensive emotionally. Which would lead me into this question is, that's something you'd never give up because you're passionate about that. I always ask business guys, when is it time to shut it down? When is it time to close a business? And most people say, well, when it's not making money. Okay, but for how long? Might it just need a cash infusion? So in your world, when is it time to quickly exit the career you're in?
If God tells me to, I will shut it down.
I'm not really talking about you. I'm talking about a person you're dealing with. Like, is there a code red? I mean, obviously, if they're getting harassed or something, but when is it time to just, listen, sometimes you need to say to somebody, because when we're inside our own picture frame, we don't see, right?
Yeah.
I don't see inside my own picture frame, which is why I thank God for, these men of God that I have around me, they're accountability partners. But when do you look at the person and say, honey, this is not even like stay there another week. This is like, let's just get cracking.
Sure. Well, I mean, I do really think that. Like, I think a lot of times we try to force things that are clearly ending because of fear, usually, right? Fear you're not going to find something else, fear there's not something better. And if something's ending, it's usually because something else needs to begin, right? Like, that has to burn down to make space for something else. So I think a lot of times we know, we just deny it. But ultimately, like, I think the number one thing is impact, right? Like, is your business making an impact? Is it helping people? Is it providing a purpose? Is it giving back to the world? That's the number one thing. If you've lost that, then I think you've lost the heart of your business, right? And then, I mean, I think the second thing is, like, is there a need for it, or is there a need for you to be used elsewhere, right? Like, are you really tapping into the gifts that you have to give?
And where does that direction come from?
Exactly.
God, right? And you had another post. I'm not stalking you. I do my research.
Yep, it's okay.
You also said when you're not learning and you're not earning. And I agree with that because I've always said if I'm in a place where I'm not being challenged, it's not bringing the best out in me, and I'm not becoming a more complete human being, I have to go.
Yeah.
And as you know, I was a police officer. It can be difficult to transition into the world, right? So
Yeah.
like I did a pretty good job transitioning into the corporate world, the entrepreneur space. But I've always looked back and I said, what happens when a cop decides it's no longer time, it's time to not be a cop anymore?
Yeah.
Or, so-and-so says it's, what is that indicator? So you sort of summed that up, which I appreciate. And I think it always boils down to like your own global health. Like, don't you see people grind through 30-year careers? They're miserable,
yeah.
they're fat, they're not healthy, they're sick, their family's destroyed.
Yeah.
And the one indicator that you can see, it's their job, but it's so foreign to somebody to change a career.
Yeah.
It's so foreign. Do you ever deal with people that are coming out of like a municipal job trying to get onto a different career path?
Oh yeah, especially right now.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, we've had teachers, nurses, people in government, lawyers, people in the medical field wanting to transition into something else. Yeah.
Yeah.
a ton.
Okay. Well, that's good that they recognize that. Here's the last and final question.
Okay.
If you could, you have one question, what would you ask God?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. Only one?
One question, what would you ask God?
And is this me like I've passed on, or like I can ask him right now on earth?
See, I love when people, they start playing like the genie thing, like, can I get an extra 3 wishes? Like,
Well, because it would be different if I'm like on earth and I could know, or if I've passed on.
you're in your car driving, and God says to you, you can ask me one question right now. What do you ask him? Not, where's the nearest Dunkin' Donuts, please.
No, I would never waste it.
No,
I
so-
mean, I think I would really want to know, truly, like, and this is from the Holy Spirit, I feel like my deep desire would be like, okay, what's my purpose, right? But that, I think, if I really had to think about it, I would want to know, how do you want to use me to impact other people? Because I really do believe that's why we're here. I think our world, we get so self-centered, we get so focused on ourselves, not even in the sense of like building things for ourselves, but you walk into a room and it's like, oh, are people looking at me? Do I look weird? Does my dress look okay? Like, we're so focused on ourselves. And I really think the point of life is to help and focus on other people. And I feel like I try every day to do that. Like, how can I help others? And I would just want to know
So what would
from
you
God,
say
like,
to him? What would you say? You're speaking to God right now. Go ahead. What would you say?
God, how do you want to use me to help other people?
That's good. And you used the word impact. I wrote my first book. We talk about influence versus impact, and I say we because the people in my life have assisted me in helping to know what the difference is. So influence is like, you see people a bunch of times and you give them these little influences.
Yeah.
Impact is sort of the sum of all those influences.
Right.
So you ask God how he would use you, what he wants you to do. You use the word purpose. I think practically everybody who has a spirit has probably asked God, what is your purpose for me? Right? What is your purpose for me?
Yeah.
Because like you said, when you get up to heaven and you get to stand before him, I'm sure that the person you meet, if it's not who you became, would say your purpose really was, and that's so tough. And that's where, just my God, the grace and the mercy of God that is required on our lives, and to hear from him. And so I'm going to add another question since we're going into Christianese. How do you hear from God?
Through his word, through prayer, through fellowship, quiet time. But I think the best way to hear from God is you have to study his word. I do believe that it's an inspired word. It's a word of God. And I'm reading the Bible front to back for the first time
cool.
this year. I'm doing the Bible recap.
Cool.
And you really get to know like his character. And it's kind of like, if someone just came in here and they said Chelsea and I didn't know them, right? I wouldn't know whose voice that is. Right. I wouldn't be able to associate it. So you have to know who that person is.
Right.
And you get to know God's voice by studying his word and his character and who he is.
Right.
So that is the way I feel like I have developed that relationship with God and how you can hear him.
That's good, because a lot of times people say, I'm just not hearing from God. And I've been there. And I'll confess, I'm sort of there in a way, but I prayed a very scary prayer about a year ago. And I said, God, and this came from one of my deacons, because he prayed the same prayer, and he said, be careful when you pray this, because you might get it. I said, God, let me see people through your eyes. And within about 2 weeks, I started seeing people through God's eyes. I think, I don't know, I'm not God, right? But I started seeing that everybody has pain.
Everyone's broken a little bit.
Everybody's broken, at least a little bit. It seems like the older the person is, the more broken they are, right?
Yeah.
Which is why kids are like just the greatest,
Angels.
right? Well, they're not angels. I mean, you don't have to tell a baby how to like scream and make
No,
demands
their
and like,
souls are so angelic.
yeah, their souls are angelic, right?
Yes.
So I started praying, in addition to that, how can I start hearing from you more readily? And basically what was put on my heart was through hurting people. And I went like, what does that mean?
Wow.
So I started gravitating towards hurting people. And I was very afraid of it because I thought if I keep getting around hurting people from very difficult circumstances, it might like leap off on me. I don't want to bring that oppression on me. And sometimes Christians
Yeah.
are discerning that. I don't want to deal with that person. They have
Right.
what going on in their life. But here's what I think that meant. When I'm dealing with a broken person, first thing I say is, hey, I'm broken too, right? And then I think what God, or the assignment that God kind of gave me out of that is, you're going to see that I don't want them to be broken. And in dealing with that brokenness, I just start to understand the characteristics of God a little bit more.
Yeah.
And he's speaking to me through other people's pain in the sense that he just wants us completely reliant on him, no matter how bad it gets.
Yes.
So, you know, everybody says sometimes just be still and know he's God. That's a struggle, right?
Yeah.
That's a wrestling match. What do you do? You know, what do you tell? And I say, this is just a general question. What do you tell a person that has no job, is about to lose their home, and then just hear some Christians say, just be still and, you know he is God. You know, it gets tough. But I think that we as Christians really have to make a very intentional effort not to run away from broken people, but to go to broken people and not affirm. You know, I always say don't affirm someone's psychoses, right? For example, I have a friend who has been unfaithful to his wife, and he broke it to her, you know, which he should have. And, you know, in his own psychoses, he's like, well, I mean, I told her, like, it happened 5 years ago. She should get over it. Well, it's fresh to her.
Yeah.
She's now the walking wounded. You got to deal with this now, bro.
Yeah.
And you are going to deal with a woman with an open, gaping wound now for however long it takes.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to affirm his psychoses,
Sure.
which a lot of Christians do, because they want the person to feel better. Oh, you're a victim. Whatever it is, you can't affirm someone's victimhood. Even if they are a victim,
Yeah.
you got to, right, put a spin on it to rely on God. And I digress.
Yeah.
Do you, now in dealing with the Hoving home, what do you find to be, like, what is the one common denominator as far as like the blocker with these girls, as far as like, do they have a vision to see themselves after the program? Or are some of them just stuck? They don't believe in themselves. I mean, they're pretty well of low self-esteem when they first come around, right?
Yeah, I don't see as many of the women at that point. Like,
Right.
I've heard about it, but when they come to me, they're a little further on in the program.
okay.
But I will say, you know, Hoving Home, for those who don't know, it's a faith-based program, and they have hope in Christ.
Right.
Like, their hope is in Christ.
Good.
So when they come to me, they are very hopeful. They see a vision and a future, and they have, I mean, nothing, most of them.
Right.
They've been through bankruptcy, or like having their debt resolved, or, you know, they have no money, no job, nothing,
Right.
but they still have hope.
Right.
And I think when you've lost it all, like, sometimes that's where God finds us. That's where we find God, right? Is to have that hope through that brokenness.
Yeah. And when they graduate, they're strong.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They
It's
are
incredible.
strong. You wouldn't even know.
You would have no idea. Yeah.
Which is funny because like if you go to like some of their functions, I think it was like the 4th of July picnic the other year. Like you don't know who's the graduate and you don't know who's in the program
No,
sometimes.
you have no idea. I know.
You
For
know?
me, I thought you go to like a recovery center and, you know, everyone's like zombies, like walking dead, just trying to survive. You go to the Hoving home and it's like they're bright, they're happy, they're still in recovery, right? But they are just so full of this this hope and this light. And that I think the Hoping Home is so successful compared to these like, $1,000 million recovery programs because
Right.
Jesus is at the center of it.
Yeah, the other recovery programs just,
Oh, yeah.
they fail because they're money makers. And but I remember at that picnic, I met 4 older women. I don't know what ages they were, but they were, impeccably, humbly dressed.
Yeah.
And they were sitting around. I'm like, oh, I wonder if these 3 ladies own a company together or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I was handing out burgers or something. And they were all graduates.
Yep. Yeah.
We're all graduates, and I was like, "Wow, that's amazing." So,
Yeah.
but listen, this has been an amazing time.
Yeah.
We'll do it again. We'll do
For
it
sure.
again. I know we will. So, until next time, the BizPhyz show. Please, please, please. The BizPhyz. I'm at the BizPhyz on Instagram. I'm at the BizPhyz on YouTube. Our infrastructure is not perfect just yet, but please take this podcast, forward it to somebody, and we appreciate your time. Thanks, Chelsea.
Of course.
Good
Thanks
seeing
for
you.
having me.